moon in over 50 years since Apollo 17. They do have 4 astronauts on board, one of which is Christina Koch. She is the first woman to go that far into deep space, and she is also from North Carolina as well. So here's a mission breakdown. As we go into, it's going to be a 10-day flight. They will be heading towards the moon, fly a figure-8 path around the moon, travel 230 miles from Earth, and return at a speed of 25,000 miles per hour. They are also going to splash down in the Pacific Ocean. And I think, yes, the launch is cool, but when they are able to splash down, you know, they eventually come out, you have a breath of fresh air after, a sigh of relief, I guess. That is also, I think, one of the coolest parts as well.
Yeah, because that's mission well done. That's mission complete. Our astronauts are back to the Earth safe. We care about science, but we care even more about our astronauts and their safety. So when they splash down and they greet us with smiles, you're just like, yes, the mission was a success. We collected awesome data and we got our astronauts back to Earth safe and sound. And then we continue to progress from there to the next stage, Artemis 3, which will take the next crew to the moon, hopefully in 2028, stepping foot on the moon again, which that's just so cool that we're talking about that.
The moon and then Mars. One of the astronauts one of the workers or employees from NASA that I interviewed a few months ago about this, she was talking about basically how this is going to be critical for them to be able to get to Mars as well, because they are building a base on the moon. So it's easier to travel from Mars to the moon, especially in case of an emergency, kind of like what they had, a medical emergency on that last launch.
That's pretty cool.
But yes, we will be highly anticipating it. We've been talking about this for so long. There have been pushbacks and, of course, some delays. But you know what? It all comes down to this moment. So we will be previewing it live here. Again, Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich hosting that live special. So we hope that you will join us this time tomorrow. In the meantime, we are going to wrap it up, but this duo has been fun, and hope everyone has a great rest of your Tuesday.
Yeah.
Welcome, everyone, inside the Impact Studio. I am Colin Mayfield for the next 2 hours. We'll have news for you here on WCNC Plus, as we do every night. We're going to start with NASA, though, as things get closer to the launch window tomorrow for the Artemis II mission and the crew that will go around the moon. We're going to have complete coverage for you right here from WCNC. But let's go to NASA right now as they brief everyone ahead of tomorrow's potential launch.
Good afternoon. You're looking at a picture of the Artemis II crew. It was taken yesterday at Launch Pad 39B with the SLS rocket and Orion spacecraft. Our first launch attempt for the Artemis II mission is tomorrow, April 1st. The 2-hour launch window opens at 6:24 p.m. Eastern Time. Welcome. I'm Antonia Jaramillo, and this is the pre-launch news conference for the Artemis II mission. Joining us today to speak about the launch countdown is Jeff Spalding, Senior NASA Test Director.
Good afternoon.
And Mark Berger, our 45th Launch Weather Officer with the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station.
Thank you.
They're going to provide some brief opening remarks, and afterwards we're going to take some questions from media here in the room as well as online. For those joining us over the phone, you can press *1 to ask your question. So without further ado, we'll kick it off with you, Jeff.
Thank you. All right, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, and thanks for joining us today. We are a little over 29 hours from our opening of the launch window tomorrow, and I am very excited myself, and just coming from the firing room just a little bit ago on my way over here, talked to a bunch of members of the team, and I'll say, normally when we're in the firing room working over there, folks got their heads down and they're working and they doing all the business that we do of the space business, but I'll say there was a lot of smiles today, so felt really good about that. As the team is preparing, I think everybody's pretty excited and understands the significance of this launch. We did talk to the flight crew last night. We had a briefing with them. We had another one just a little bit before I went down to the firing room. We had another briefing with them. Last night was just to kind of go over the day of launch routine with them and kind of a refresher for ourselves and for them, and that went really well. They were in great spirits. And then we had another briefing today just to talk about how the launch countdown was going, and as we'll talk here in a little bit, it's been going really well. Let's see, since Charlie spoke to you yesterday, we've got quite a bit of work done. We started out yesterday, the first thing we do usually is fill up the sound suppression systems with water, and when we start working on getting the liquid oxygen, liquid hydrogen systems ready for our propellant loading that's coming up in the future. We did power up all of the vehicles. We powered up the Orion core stage as well as the ICPS yesterday. We did communication checks, RF checkouts on the systems, and then after that we got through all of that work. Then we went ahead and powered down the ICPS because there was no more work for them until later tonight when we power ICPS back up. But of course, core stage and Orion stay powered up through the remainder account. Today we got launch pad ground system configurations in work. We're doing closeouts in a number of areas. We're doing walk downs as we work through the pad to make sure everything is configured for launch. We're also in work on the late stow right now. We should be getting the Avatar and the bags that we're doing in the late stow going up. They were prepping them in the PTCR down in below the pad terminal changeout room, which is the area beneath the pad where we have some rooms, and getting those ready to go up, and they should be being installed as we speak. And then let's see, tonight we're going to be doing a whole lot of other work as we get ready to clear the pad. We do have some work associated with the Orion ground equipment and systems that we use to do the leak checks on the crew suits, and so we'll be working those later tonight to configure those and check them out and make sure they're ready for when we hook up to the crew on launch day. We'll be powering some of the Orion guidance systems later tonight as well. We do intend to clear personnel from the pad at about 3 in the morning. at that point. And then we'll get ready for our air-to-GN2 changeover at about 4 in the morning. We do that. We purge the vehicle with air routinely for the whole flow. Once we get to this point where we're getting ready to add hazardous propellants like hydrogen, for example, we change over to GN2 to have an inert environment for safety purposes on the vehicle and all of the volumes that are on there. Let's see, later, once we get through the air-to-GN2 changeover and all the other work is done, our launch director will have a final weather brief. And once we get out of that, she'll signal the team that we are ready to start our propellant loading. And that's scheduled to occur at about 7:34 tomorrow morning. That loading takes a little over 5.5 hours. We'll work through that. As mentioned yesterday by the launch director, we have inserted some time in front of that propellant loading time frame, so that if we are in fact done with all of the work and are ready to go and we can start a little bit early, like a few minutes, we will try to take that and take every bit of time that we can to get ready and prepared for the crew and be prepared for anything else that might happen. So we did that purposefully to give ourselves a little bit of room in that time frame based on the launch director's guidance. Let's see, during the propellant loading, the flight crew will wake up at about 9:45 tomorrow morning. They'll have breakfast and start working towards their preparations for launch day, getting their suits on and doing all the other work that they have to get ready to head out to the pad. And then once we get to all stages replenish, which is a little after almost 1:15 in the afternoon tomorrow, we'll send a closeout crew to the pad. All stages replenish is when we're done tanking, essentially. We filled all the propellant onto the core stage and the upper stage ICPS. And at that point, we're only just replenishing the propellant that's boiling off at the same rate, so we keep it full. We do lose quite a bit of propellant during that time frame, and so we will continue to just work that throughout. After that, we'll send a flight crew to the pad. They're going to head out a little before 2 o'clock and to get into the spacecraft. As I mentioned, the closeout crew is going to go out before them, so they'll have been working that time to prepare the capsule for the flight crew arrival. And then the flight crew will get out there, and then they'll work in the insertion portion, in which we're going to strap the flight crew members into the seats of Orion. And after that, we'll do the final closeouts in the crew module. We'll close the hatches. There's some pressurization checks we do and some other things and at the end, and then we'll clear the white room and then get ready to get into terminal count. Our closeout crew clears the white room at about 5:30 tomorrow night. It's almost an hour before launch. That's our plan time. After that point, we'll finish the rest of the work and configurations that we can do remotely, and then, excuse me, we'll proceed into the launch team poll, and then after that, the launch director will perform her management poll. And then we'll get in a terminal count for the last 10 minutes of launch countdown. So that's essentially the work ahead of us. And I would say that our team has been working amazingly hard through these weeks and months trying to get this vehicle ready to where it is. We've had some challenges. The team has done an outstanding job managing each and every one of those throughout all of this, through many different scenarios, through weather, through lots of different things that we've had to work through to try to get through all of this and get to where we are today. People are excited and ready to go on this first chapter on our way back to the moon since the 1970s. So we're very excited. So, Mark, over to you.
Right. Thank you, Jeff. Good afternoon, everybody. So amazing times. It's great to be here at this point. And of course, weather has been a nuanced thing for us at times here in the generation phase of this mission. But again, look outside right now, great weather. Hopefully we will keep all of that, although the breezes continue to be an issue for us, but a minor one for us in terms of weather. If we could pull up the satellite imagery here, you can see currently what we're looking at. Another beautiful day here in Florida. See a few cumulus clouds moving from the east side of the state towards the west. That is our onshore flow that we've had really the most for the last 2 weeks or so. And a few of those cumulus clouds could evolve later today into a few showers, much like what we saw yesterday evening. And again, that's going to be one of the watch items for weather as we go into tomorrow and tomorrow afternoon as well. Let's take a look at some of the overview slides here just to kind of give you a synopsis of what we're looking at here. So the breezy weather does continue. Again, Artemis is a very resilient vehicle, so despite the breezes, it looks like that concern is a minimal concern for our day of launch. Lightning risk with any sort of showers that we have is quite low, generally only on the order of 5 to 10%, and that would be generally during the late afternoon, and any of that activity pushes towards Orlando after that. So again, it leaves us in a better spot here for our launch opportunity. We take a little bit look at what else could potentially be of an impact. You may have heard about the sun. It's become a little bit more active. Here over the last day, we've had a solar flare erupt, but again, no or minimal impact for us out of that, as most of the energy is not earthward facing. So again, we continue to look good in that department as well. We look towards backup opportunities. So for whatever reason, if we can't utilize tomorrow, the weather, of course, is a changeable entity, and we do have a tendency to move towards somewhat less favorable through the rest of the week. It isn't a huge drop-off, but again, kind of a little bit more of a situation where we'll have to monitor those feisty cumulus clouds and potentially a few showers and breezes as well. So we go to the next slide, please. And again, I just wanted to bring this up real quickly with the sun. So this was an image here from this morning. Again, the area that's circled on the solar disk, that is the area that we were watching that produced a solar flare yesterday. Again, it's directed most of its energy away from the Earth, and in fact there's been no response in terms of the particular particles that we look at that could influence the launch vehicle. And so by this point, or within the next couple of hours, if we don't get a response at all from our satellite data, then that threat will have waned as well. We'll still have to watch that sunspot group, however, because it is rotating off towards the center of the solar disk. So again, this flare not a concern, but should there be additional ones, that will be something that we'll have to monitor a bit. But again, at the current time, I see no issues in terms of our launch capability for that. Next slide, please. All right, and taking a look at our cross-section. So we meteorologists like to look at the atmosphere not only on maps, but we also like to look at what's happening through the depth of the atmosphere and with time. So here at Kennedy Space Center on this graph, you can see the metrics there, altitude there, going up into the atmosphere basically to the level of what a jet aircraft would fly. And then in time, we go from left to right from today through the weekend, including our launch opportunities. So the green on this map, which pops out here, is just a moisture profile. It doesn't necessarily mean rain. It just means that there's a little bit more of a predisposition for more clouds and rain. You also see the winds on there. Those are the black lines that are there with the little barbs on the end of them. So that gives us an indication of wind speed. So right now we're out of the east-southeast. We'll generally remain in that direction. We might back a little bit more to easterly winds as we go, but generally speeds in the 15 to 20 knot range, which again does not violate any of our liftoff weather constraints there. You do see superimposed on there the various launch opportunities, including tomorrow as the primary window, and then the next 3 days. So you do see a day-to-day fluctuation with that moisture content. On any given day, we'll likely get a few showers to develop off of that. But again, with the onshore flow, most of those showers with the sea breeze each day, which tend to be the more vigorous showers, will move off towards Orlando. You do see towards the end of this chart, so going into the weekend and beyond, a much more massive amount of moisture, the green there. And did want to point that out because this is just but one model at one time, and there has been a fair amount of inconsistency to how that moisture evolves. There's just pretty strong hints that we will see an increasingly unfavorable environment as we get beyond this weekend and maybe late into the weekend. But again, I wanted to point that out because some of the charts I'm going to show utilizing another model gives you an idea of the battle that us meteorologists follow every day with trying to assess the uncertainty component of the atmosphere. So next slide, please. All right, so this is for tomorrow. Again, the green blotches here would indicate rain. You can see still an onshore flow. You do see a little bit of green to the west of us. Again, that would be sea breeze-driven activity that has moved off towards the west during the late day hours. But still, if you squint hard enough, you can see a few green blotches lurking in the Atlantic waters. Again, much like yesterday evening, if you were out and about, the few showers rolled in. That is certainly a possibility for us, again, for tomorrow evening. Next slide, please. We are now in range, though, of some of our more high-resolution model guidance. So this indicates 2 different models that we look at here for the opening of our launch window for tomorrow evening. You can see some of them showing a few blotches of showers offshore, particularly the model that's on the left there. The right is mostly clear for us and has more of the showers, again, to the west of us. And again, in this pattern with an onshore flow, any showers that we have will move from east to west there. So again, it looks pretty good. Even if we have showers around, we have a 2-hour launch window, we should be able to shoot the gap between those showers, and none of these look particularly vigorous. Again, as I mentioned, the risk for lightning, which would expand our standoff distances as far as us launching a vehicle, looks pretty minimal for that threat for tomorrow. Next slide, please. So putting the graphics into numbers here, still maintaining a 20% chance of a no-go condition during the launch window. So the optimistic side of me says that means 80% chance of go here. Again, isolated showers wandering around, but again, a lot of real estate between those showers in all likelihood. So again, we should be able to find some clear air to launch Artemis 2. Again, there's those winds out of the east-southeast, 15 to 20 knots, mild temperatures there. And again, the order of concerns from the weather standpoint here, cumulus cloud, and then winds would be a secondary threat, and then a much more distant threat would be solar weather. Again, the current flare, not a concern. It would be if there were any additional ones that form on the sun, potentially we would have to watch those. So let's go into the next day for our Thursday. Again, pretty similar pattern, still onshore flow. It does look a little windier, again, so that is an additional concern. And you also see a little bit more green, at least in the area. So again, I do suspect that a Thursday evening attempt would have a little bit more weather to deal with. So a POV of roughly 40% is what I'd be advertising for a Thursday evening launch attempt. Again, very similar concerns with the cumulus clouds and the winds as well. And then the next day, going into our Friday to close out the work week here, again, you see very similar pattern. Winds still in that roughly 15 to 20 knot range, and easterly or southeasterly, and still some green blotches out over the ocean. So again, that's a hint that there'll still be enough moisture to generate some showers. But there does again look to be more breaks in that weather for Friday. So POV would go back down to 25%. So roughly in the same ballpark as tomorrow for Friday. Tomorrow still looks to be probably the most optimum day of the lot. And then finally, going into the weekend for Saturday, again, this is what I pointed out on that cross section in my earlier slides, is that moisture fetch that was shown later in the weekend on that model, you can see it's a lot closer to home as we go into Saturday. It's actually spilling some of that moisture in towards us. Again, this is probably the most aggressive model at that. So again, just part of that uncertainty component that we deal with when we have limited forward visibility going out a number of days. So all things considered, a Saturday evening launch attempt would definitely have to throttle the POV back up again to right now about 30% or close to 1 in 3 chance of a weather violation on that date. So tomorrow looks to be the best. Other days hit and miss, but still pretty good. There's nothing here that is screaming a no-go for the entirety of the window for any one of these attempts.
Thank you, Mark. We like to hear that. All right, we will now open up the floor to questions here in the room and also online. Just as a reminder to those joining us over the phone, you can press *1 to submit a question. All right, we will start with Bill Harwood.
Hey, Bill Harwood, CBS News. Jeff, good to see you back here again from your shuttle days. It's been a while. I think for Artemis 1 there was something like 42, 41 COLAs, collision avoidance cutouts. What's the story for Artemis 2? There's a lot more stuff up in low Earth orbit than there used to be. Thanks.
Yeah, there's quite a few more that we manage now, and part of that is how we're actually laying out the COLAs. We had combined a number of COLAs during Artemis 1 where there were small gaps in between them, and now we're showing all of the COLAs to give us more flexibility, if you will, because when you have when you combine those, it takes out larger chunks of time when you potentially you could have launched in one of those points between there. So if you had, say, 3 colas with a small period of time with it and you combine them all, that takes out a larger chunk than leaving those gaps. And we're pretty good now during our trainings at being able to pick up the clock quickly and on the fly and hit those very narrow gaps that are in between all of these colas that we're dealing with now. So I think that it's definitely in our best interest to keep it where it is.
Do you know what the number is?
Right now we're at about 156, and they assess that on a daily basis, so it could change it by a couple.
All right, we will go to Marcia Dunn.
Marcia Dunn, Associated Press. How much wiggle room do you have to either halt the countdown or deal with a solar flare that is a big one and comes out at you like during the, once tanking begins? I just didn't know how much heads-up time you need, and just sort of talk about that, please.
So we have launch commit criteria that are outlined for the solar weather, and those go down to T-minus 6 minutes. And so we would be evaluating those throughout. Mark and their team would be looking at those, and if there were an LCC violation, would call it back through the launch weather officer to the launch director. Mark, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add there, but
yeah, I'll add a little bit. That's exactly right. And just to give you kind of a background, currently our satellite data from this most recent event that erupted yesterday, as far as the actual particles or protons that would potentially impact a launch for the vehicle, we're running about 2 orders of magnitude below our constraint, and that's just barely above background levels. So again, we have a lot of time to see the response, and in fact these particular particles, the protons, they are laggards. So if there's an eruption, we'll get the X-rays first. Those will be detected by satellite, and then the protons follow, and those are the ones that are a little bit more nuanced in terms of the actual ability to launch. Those are where the constraints are based. So we do have lead time for that.
Thank you both. We'll go to Jackie, right there in the last row.
Hi, thanks for doing this. A question for Jeff. We've been learning over the past few days that because of this larger hydrogen tank, there's more flexibility with recycling. But we also were told that if you have to hold or abort for weather or technical issue after T-minus 5 minutes, that you can't do a same-day recycle. I was wondering, can you walk us through that? Why?
All right, everyone, going to take a quick 2-minute break away from this NASA briefing. We'll come back to it when we come back. Thanks for coming back with us, everyone. Going to go back to this NASA briefing. Let's go to this right now.
Hear more about what is and isn't possible during terminal count?
So the main driver in a recycle is the amount of time that you have, because a recycle does take a fair amount of time. For us, it's about 75 minutes. If we've gone all the way through from 6 down to about a minute and a half, or even down to 33 seconds, and we've been in that time frame, it can take us as much as 75 minutes. It takes less than that the closer we are to 6 minutes, because that's when we stop actually topping off the tanks at that point, and we shut everything off and it's boiling off. And so, but the 5-minute constraint, it's not really a constraint there for us as to whether we can or cannot. We can do a recycle as long as there's enough time in the launch window to perform it. We can do a recycle all the way down. The only constraint we have is if we get inside of T-minus 33 seconds and we have a cutoff, then we're going to have to scrub for the day, because we can't recycle from after 33 seconds.
All right, we'll go up front right here.
Yes, Bert Dicht from Ad Astra Magazine, National Space Society. We often hear that about 400,000 people were involved with the Apollo program, and certainly tens of thousands have been involved with Artemis. As we get ready to the launch, I just want to recognize the workforce and see what's their mood as I know they're focused in their jobs, but how are they all feeling?
Well, the people that I get the pleasure to work with and talk with are extremely excited. We have a large mix of young and more seasoned people like myself, and as such, everybody understands the significance of this mission, and especially the flight crew. But the team that I get to work with, they come in every day, and people are concerned sometimes that we are working so hard towards these milestones and things, but there really isn't. People love coming to work. They love doing this job, and that's why they're here, and they work through it every single day to get us to this point. I think everybody understands what our mission is, and that's to get back to the moon, and we're going to establish a presence there in the very near future. And the fact that we've changed direction and been able to get some additional launches, that really changed the calculus for a lot of people as to what we were doing and how we were going to get there and the things that we're going to do. So I think there's a lot of excitement and fervor within all of the groups that are out there, but especially here at Kennedy, the folks that I see are very, very excited to get on with this mission and get started with the next one. And we got boosters coming in a month, so we're going to be looking for that.
Thanks, Jeff. We are excited. All right, we're going to take some questions over the phone. We have Ken Chang with the New York Times.
Thank you. This is from Mark. I was just wondering, when you say there's a 20% probability of violation, is that 20% for the entire 2-hour window, or is it 20% that there will be a red during the window? And if it's the latter, can you say what the chances are that there would be a launch opportunity? Thank you.
Yeah, good question. So again, the 20% just refers to the probability of having a violation during the launch window. That violation could last 5 minutes, it could last 30 minutes, it could last an hour. In this particular setup, I would imagine that if we get a violation, generally Cumulus Cloud would be the most likely candidate, probably in and out inside of about 30 minutes. And then again, as kind of the high resolution models hinted to, and what the pattern supports, likely we would have additional opportunities within a 2-hour duration window.
Thank you. Next up, we have Christopher Mick with the Hudson Star Observer.
Thank you for the information today and for holding this briefing. I just wanted to ask a follow-up kind of on the weather hold question. I know you can't completely control that with where you are in the count, but I think you mentioned, Mark, in the 2-hour window, there's some bands of green that could potentially be coming through. Is an optimal situation? Could you kind of walk us through? Is that like holding at 10 minutes and then you're waiting for that band to move through and proceeding on from the 10-minute mark? Is it at 20 minutes? Is there kind of a, what are the opportunities for kind of being the best to hold at?
As far as the holds go, we have very prescribed holds as to where we can hold. Generally, if we have a weather constraint, we're going to hold it T-minus 10 minutes. We won't pick up the clock from there generally if we have a weather constraint. if we are counting between 10 and 6 minutes, we can hold at 6. We can hold there for quite a while, actually, through the remainder of the launch window if there is a violation that occurs between 10 and 6 of any of our weather LCCs. So we can sit there for a while. If we pick up a weather constraint inside of T-6 and counting, if it's something that's most likely, if we're going to have a constraint, we're probably not going to get it in a very short period of time. So we'll have to do a recycle and then come back and see if the weather's going to be good on the other side of that. But we have very prescribed hold points and where we can, stop and then pick up the clock again as required.
Thank you. We'll now take questions back here in the room. We have one here right up front with this gentleman over here.
Hi, good afternoon. Tom Costello with NBC News. As you are now back on the pad, and of course in February you dealt with the issues on the wet dress and the tanking issues, what will be the earliest concerning signs you'll be watching for as you begin tanking tomorrow morning, assuming everything is going well, but you will clearly have your eyes very closely monitoring that tanking progress? What will you be closely watching for that there could be signs of trouble?
The first thing we would probably be looking at is a recurrence of these events that happened previously, right? So once we get in a fast fill on hydrogen, that is where we had the previous issue where we had the leaks. We believe that we've solved those through, we've changed the seals out, we've done exhaustive testing, and so we feel pretty good about that. We went through a wet dress with that seal, so all of that says that we feel pretty good about all of that. But that's where we would generally be looking at, first of all, is right there at the beginning when we transition from slow fill to fast fill on the hydrogen side.
Thanks. We'll take some more questions over here in the room. Let's go over to this side. We'll go right here up front as well.
Hi, Sawyer Rosenstein with NSF. We talked obviously about the weather here at the Cape and around the area, but what about abort weather criteria? Can you go into what that looks like for the coming days, and also how often are you measuring it? How are you measuring it as well?
Okay, yeah, good question, and a complex one, actually. So the winds are obviously coming from onshore, and the whole point of, in case of an abort, is if we have to utilize that system, we do not want to have the Orion capsule land back on land. So there are particular thresholds, are really the component of the onshore wind that's exactly perpendicular to the coast. And so just getting a wind out of the east, southeast, the actual coastline is more oriented northeast. So we take only a fraction of that onshore component, which helps us out. Now, if the winds were starting to back, if we saw that indication on maybe one of the backup days that instead of them coming out of southeast, they were more northeasterly, we would unfortunately be exposed to a higher percentage of that onshore component. So we do look at it at a layer, not only at the ground, but all the way up through 4,800 feet, and to make that assessment, and it's an average speed through that layer, and we actually do have calculations to run that. But the decision point is actually from a balloon that is launched at L-minus 3 hours and 10 minutes. We'll be providing the launch director already with assessments of the forecast well before then. But that L-minus 3 hour and 10 minute balloon is really where we'll report the hardline data as to whether or not that component that is onshore northeasterly is actually in violation of the magnitude constraint of that. And then at that point, if that were to be the case, then we'd be continually advising the LD about what our expectations are. Subsequent balloons will be launched and will also give us a read for that. In addition to balloons, we also have the 915 megahertz sounders that we have, which also give us real-time assessments of what the wind direction and magnitude is. So we have a number of ways to address this. So even if we were to proceed deeper into the countdown, weather of course changes, and so the forecast component plus the actual hardcore balloon data and the sounding data gives us that ability to make a forecast and provide numbers. So it's possible at one point in the countdown we could be technically unacceptable for that low-level wind abort constraint, but then evolve to be acceptable or vice versa.
Thank you, Mark. We'll go ahead and take then the person right behind him.
Tim Dodd, Everyday Astronaut. Can you give us a quick little refresher on if we do go through an entire launch window tomorrow, and we might be holding for weather or whatever, we do have a 24-hour recycle capability for Thursday. Is that correct? And/or if that's not correct, what does the return around look like? And if we do burn up a 24-hour recycle, what then are we at? 48 hours for the next attempt? Can you just run me through the full reset situation.
Sure, and we generally would refer that as more of a scrub than a recycle, because our recycle is that time that we try to have a second attempt. But for our scrub plan, we have opportunities. Right now we're set up for 48 and 24-hour capabilities throughout. We have 4 launch attempts available to us in 6 days, and we'll take a combination of that. As mentioned yesterday, our launch director mentioned our sort of baseline or preferred method is to do a 48, then into 24, and then followed by 48, and that to set us up for LOX tankers. But there are a lot of other factors that come into that. If, in fact, we have weather or other types of things that may say that second, if you wait 48 hours, those aren't good dates. So there's a whole lot of factors that come in to that evaluation when we determine the date. We set up for dates, and then we adjust as we need to based on what happened during that kicked us out for the scrub or any other types of things. So, but we have capabilities for 4 attempts in 6 days, and I need to have a couple of 48-hour scrubs in there so that I can take tankers for the liquid oxygen system.
Thanks. We'll now go to the other side. We'll go right up there.
Hi, Robert Perlman with CollectSpace.com. There's a long history dating back to the Apollo era guys of pulling pranks on launch day with the launch team and with the launch team pulling pranks on the flight crew. And given that tomorrow is April 1st, I was wondering if, maybe without spoiling anything, if there's been any talk about that, or whether there's actually been a decision to not do that and stay away from that.
So I am not aware of any pranks that anybody intends to pull on the flight crew or in the launch team itself. So I think I'll just leave it at that. But I'm not aware of any, and I'm hoping that we just stay focused on the launch tomorrow. So that's our plan.
Good plan. All right, we'll go to Ken Kramer over here. Oh, or to that gentleman instead. We'll get you next.
Hi, Jeff Faust of Space News. For Mark, if there is another CME, solar event of some kind, how much time do you need between when it's detected to provide sort of the all clear or say that it is in fact in violation of conditions?
I'll tell you that it really solar forecasting makes terrestrial forecasting look easy. So of course the sun is an entity that has almost a mind of its own. But the first initial indication is a surge in X-rays that arrive roughly 8 minutes after the event. But the protons, which are one of the constraints for launch, those lag some time. It could be in the order of a number of minutes to hours. And then potentially any sort of additional flare, of course, we'd be watching real time on satellite data. So sometimes those are pretty quick fuse or quick turnaround events, but oftentimes in this kind of situation, the spike would happen pretty gradually. So you'd see an uptick in those protons, and then eventually that would be a precursor to a more concerning surge. But again, right now we're hovering right around background levels, and it takes actually quite a bit of energy directed towards the Earth for us to even get close to those constraints. And right now where that sunspot group is, it's still kind of out on the limb. Talking to the experts at NOAA's Space Weather Prediction Center this morning, they're the ones who monitor this and forecast this, though they're definitely more in that lane than I am. They also see kind of about a 55% chance that we would get an M-class flare over the next 48 hours. That's a lower level flare. Again, probably not a concern at all. And then a 10% chance over the next 48 hours of an additional X-class. But again, that doesn't say anything of how that energy is directed, which at this point, that energy will have a preference to not be directed towards Earth. In a few days' time from now, if we were to get another flare from that sunspot group as it rotates towards the center of the solar disk, that would be something that would predispose us to getting a little bit more of that energy. But as far as whether or not that's actually enough to trick a constraint, that's still a pretty high bar to reach.
Thank you. We'll now go up front right over here.
Hi, thank you for doing this. Ken Kramer, Space Up Close for Jeff. Tell me, I'm very interested to know about the LOX and the hydrogen testing that you're doing. You mentioned you're doing a little bit, I think. Can you go into some detail? What are you doing to ensure the best possible outcome so that we don't have any leaks, especially of hydrogen?
Well, that was essentially the purpose of, excuse me, our WDR2 as we went through that. And then likewise, we had done it. Yeah, out of the pad. When we're back, we do a number of different leak tests and pressurization tests and decay checks and those types of things throughout the system. We do more of those when we get to the pad. After we hook up the systems at the pad, we test the system from end to end for the same types of things. As far as on the liquid oxygen or system and on a liquid hydrogen system, both, we do what we call dew points, meaning we purge those to the point where we want to make sure that we have no moisture in the lines or at an extremely low level so that you don't have potential icing in the system. So we do all of these different things to make sure that the system is going to behave in the way we expect it to on launch day, and we've accomplished all of that to date, so we should be good.
Thank you. We'll now take some questions over the phone. We have TJ Mascara with the Epoch Times.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for taking the time. My question's for Mark. Can you please give a bit of a refresh about the cloud violations and the concerns behind them?
Yeah, indeed. So Cumulus Cloud, which is the one that we're talking about here, and that's one of the Lightning Launch Commit criteria, that's actually the most commonly violated here on the east coast of Florida any time of year. Again, you walk outside most days, you'll see a puffy, what looks like a cotton ball out there. If that cotton ball gets more agitated and it grows throughout the depth of the atmosphere, that's when it starts triggering our so-called standoff distances that could cause an issue for launch. So as long as they're shallow and flat, not an issue to fly right through them. But they get up to certain levels of altitude, it could be as much as a 10-mile standoff distance between the rocket on its flight path or the launch pad and the edge of that cloud. And so, again, they have to get quite vigorous. They don't even have to produce the lightning to get necessarily at that 10-mile standoff distance. For the launch date coming up, I don't foresee any of the cumulus getting that high into the atmosphere or that cold, which would trigger that much real estate being blocked off for us. But we could certainly have fly-through considerations, which means we can't launch the rocket directly into the cumulus cloud or possibly even as far as 5 miles from it, just given how the atmosphere profile looks like. The depth of moisture is pretty shallow, even though it feels really humid out there. So again, that helps us in that consideration. But I'll also point out that just looking at our overall climatology here on the Eastern Range, so almost 1 out of 4 launches over the course of the year would have 1 or more no-go lightning launch commit criteria. Doesn't mean the launch scrubs, but again, it's a pretty common occurrence. Scrub would be a lot lower percentage than that. So again, that kind of speaks to the transitory nature of these clouds. You get a 2-hour launch window, they could be in the flight path and then just as soon be right out of it.
Thank you. We'll now go back to the room, and we'll take it in the second row here to this lady right there.
Nicole Mortillero, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Going back to the X flares, I know that there's a radiation shielding test that will be done on this mission. Can you talk about what that radiation shielding is and how it works, and if you needed to do it, let's say, day after tomorrow after launch, would they be able to do that quick enough?
Go ahead and defer that to Jeff or...
Yeah, the crew has the ability, and we anticipate that if there are, in fact, any need for shielding from radiation on orbit, they have contingency plans for that. They're going to practice some of that during the mission. As far as where they go into the vehicle and those types of things, there's some space in there that they can actually move into in the vehicle that will provide an additional shielding of the components of the ship itself, which provide the shielding inside of the areas in which they would be able to get to. They also would potentially move some of the equipment near to some of by the windows and some of the other things as they do that. But there's a protocol that they have for that, and I'm not probably the most versed person on it, but that's the part that I can tell you of some of the things that they have that are capability-wise that they can do on orbit when there are any of these types of events.
Thanks, Jeff, and we can get you some more info if you have additional follow-ups. We'll go to the gentleman right next to her.
Thank you very much. Tarek Malik for Space.com. I think for Jeff, you just mentioned the need for focus and whatnot, of course, because it's April Fool's Day coming up. But by all accounts, it sounds like this has been a very smooth and continual run-up to the launch. And I'm just curious how you are ensuring that the team continues that vigilance in what has been a very staid and quiet countdown.
I would say that I wouldn't necessarily characterize that because it's quiet that we're not still doing the same amount of rigor out in the field. We're just finding less things now than we had previously. I think at times you get to a point where you have found and corrected as many things as maybe are available to you, and so the things that we find now are quite small and much less significant than we had in the past. So I hope that's a really good sign, but we still have the same amount of vigilance. We have the same procedures, the same people doing the same type of events throughout 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we've been working up to this. And so we are still in the same posture, regardless of whether maybe it looks like it's quiet. People are still putting in the same amount of effort and working towards, because again, they know the significance of the mission and the people that we're flying on it, and that they're going to do the right thing and make sure that we're safe to do so.
Hey everyone, I'm going to take another 2-minute break. We'll finish our NASA briefing right after we come back. Welcome back, everyone. I'm going to go back to this NASA briefing as we get closer to the Artemis 2 mission tomorrow.
The third row, we'll go to the gentleman there in the middle.
Thanks so much. Mike Mainberg, Wall Street Journal. Jeff, kind of related to what Tarek just asked, it's been more than 3 years since Artemis 1. Have you observed kind of in this process any jitters on different teams, any rustiness getting out there as the real thing unfolds? Yeah, thank you.
We've been training since Artemis 1 for this time, right? But we've also had to modify a lot of our procedures, hardware, equipment, training, and other things to get to where we are. As we've worked through that, it has been a building process for sure. We've seen that just in working through the WDRs, and the number of items that we've picked up each time has continuously gone down when we got through the countdown demonstration test and the WDR2. And so, again, I would say if anything, we're learning, we're getting better. We're in the ability for us to improve our procedures is at a point where I think we're at a really good state now, and almost at a steady state to where we're where we need to be certainly for this mission, and we'll continue to improve that. Artemis 3 is going to be a slightly different mission, but we're already working towards that. We got a lot of folks that are engaged in Artemis 3, and we're taking what we've learned from Artemis 2 and going to be applying it, and that'll be another challenge too as we work towards that.
Thank you. We'll go then to the gentleman in that same row at the far end.
Charles Fulco, Westchester County, producing the solar system ambassador. I remember the Apollo 12 launch very well and what happened. Is there a concern that the booster might lose its guidance if there's a similar lightning strike, or the spacecraft might lose its platform, like what happened in Apollo 12? And if so, what are some accommodations for that?
So I would say for what we try to do before we would launch, because again, we create a lot of launch commit criteria to avoid that very circumstance, right? A lot of things came out of that event which have led us to where we are today for all of these requirements that we have, both on the range and for vehicle requirements and those other types of things that Mark can speak to, I'm sure, very, very eloquently. But our systems and our vehicles are very robust. We have redundancy and capability throughout. If there were any type of event that we needed to work through, it's really hard to gauge exactly what that would mean. But all of our systems are hardened against various events. They have to fly in space, many of these, right, where we have to worry about solar events and other types of high energy events. So the vehicle is as robust, I think, as it needs to be, and we have the number of systems and robustness in it by having redundancy to allow us to weather many types of different things. And I don't know if you want to talk about the criteria and what's changed or not, but
nothing to add, really.
Really?
You said it well.
Okay.
Thank you both. All right, we'll take then the one question there all the way in the back.
Hey, Nell Greenfield Boyce with NPR. This is for Jeff. So you've been involved in a lot of shuttle launches, but this one could go to the moon. And I'm just wondering, like, does it feel different for you? I mean, you look like you were probably a kid during the days of Apollo. Like, would, 10-year-old you have thought that you'd be involved in a moon launch like this? Do you think about that at all? Or how does it actually feel? I mean, there's all the things you got to check off and do, but are you guys thinking about the moon? Have you been looking at the moon at night and thinking about that at all?
I'll just say from my personal experience, I have. Right, I try to walk every day in the morning, and I look up at the moon quite regularly, thinking about this mission and the upcoming missions that are going to be coming right downstream. So I'm really excited about this. I'm excited going to the moon. I'm excited about establishing a presence there. It's something that I have had a desire for a great many years, and then to get humans back out to Mars as well. That's another thing that I had. Fortunately, I had the ability to work on some of the studies that we did in the 90s on the Mars missions and things. And so I have been looking for human exploration of this solar system for a very long time. And it's part of the reason that I'm actually still here is to continue to put humans into space and to get us back into this launch mode that we are, so that we can continue to explore and establish a moon base and then continue to work towards getting to Mars.
Thank you. We'll go to the other side. We'll go right here in the second row to the lady right there.
Hi, Brandy Campbell with Fox Weather. I have a question about weather, of course, from Mark. Just with your past experience with issuing these forecasts, when you have a similar forecast to what we are dealing with, that 20% chance of a weather violation, do y'all normally get through that 2-hour window or just the window and have a successful launch? What have you experienced in the past?
Well, of course, the forecast is perfect, so it's a 1 in 5 chance of us getting a weather violation. If we look at all the data over time, it comes out to being pretty close. But again, each countdown is different, so sometimes there's 20% that end up being no-go the entirety of the launch window. There's others, and most of them don't have a violation. So pretty close to that 4 in 5 times, and again, in a pattern like this where we have a moist onshore flow, I would be definitely thinking that we'll probably have showers around. Whether or not they get into the flight through path of the rocket, that's a wholly other story. We're good because this time of year and this pattern doesn't lead to a lot of robust thunderstorms, so that does help us. It also eliminates a lot of lightning launch commit criteria, so that works in our favor as well.
Thank you. We'll go over there to the gentleman in the blue shirt, the blue collar shirt.
Hi, Pedro Palota from Space Orbit Brazil. You talk a lot about the weather for launch, but I would like to know about the weather for splashdown, and if is there a chance to move the launch day due to a better weather for the splashdown? I know we are a lot of days for the splashdown, but the weather can improve or get worse. So I want to understand what is the backup scenario for that.
Do you want to talk the weather first?
Okay, yeah, I can speak a little bit to the weather. So we're not, at the 45th Weather Squadron, we're not specifically issuing a forecast for the Ascent Corridor or the Pacific here. We do have a team of forecasters that will be deployed out to the Pacific for the recovery. So they'll be watching that as well and assisting in all of that. But really for us here on day of launch, the only thing downrange that we're really looking at other than thunderstorms and the associated clouds and the lightning launch commit criteria would be what those low-level Orion abort winds would be on that corridor. We have colleagues out in Houston, Spaceflight Meteorology Group, that are assessing risk profiles going out across the Atlantic on ascent far beyond the Cape. Jeff, I'll let you speak to the rest of it.
Yeah, and the flight team is part of that assessment that would be done on day of launch about the capabilities that we would have both for any kind of contingency landing, an abort once around, or any type of other event, and that folds into the launch day decision process as to whether we're going to make an attempt or not. We do have quite a bit of flexibility based on weather in the Pacific for those various scenarios. But that is essentially a launch day decision and would be part of the overall decision on whether we tank or whether we launch based on that weather criteria that coming out of the flight control team.
Thank you. We'll go to the gentleman there in the back, to Stephen Clark.
The Stephen Clark, yeah. So I am Stephen Clark with Ars Technica. Following up on that last question, have you heard anything from SMG about how the Ascent Corridor is looking? I know that's not within your responsibility, but what are you hearing about the downrange weather in the Atlantic? And also for Jeff, just want to make sure, I know the trajectory and the azimuth changes day to day. Does it actually change like minute to minute within the launch window, and how do you manage that, if so, with different conditions and different azimuths? Thanks.
Yeah. So yeah, the azimuth does change, minute by minute. Luckily, it's a fairly small slice, so that was something we dealt with Artemis 1 as well. That impacts us because, of course, from a radar and launch lightning commit criteria, that sort of thing, we have to use those trajectories to decide whether or not a cloud would actually pose a threat wherever it is during the actual countdown. What was the first part of your question, please, again?
Sure. Just what are you hearing from SMG about the Ascent Corridor?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Right now, weather appears to be very much go. The threat that I saw in the last was under 9% total along the total Ascent Corridor, so that's really good. And in fact, the other aspects show decent weather continuing through a lot of the launch period. So having high pressure set up across the North Atlantic this time of year works in our favor.
Thank you. We'll go over to Ada right there.
Hi. Is there a defining moment in the countdown when the reality sets that humans are returning to deep space, and how do you experience that as a leader in this mission?
So for me, once we get inside of 10 minutes and counting, that's where it starts, because we all on the launch team at that particular point know that it's become real for all of us. We also know that we all need to be prepared to do everything we can to continue through that or to take any action that would be required. But it really starts to get real for me when we're inside of 1 minute. And when we're inside of 1 minute, to me, I feel very confident and very hopeful that we're going to go. But that's when the first time I think I ever actually think to myself that we really are going to make it that day, because I'm always thinking about what's going to not let us go, right? Because that's part of my job, is to stop the clock if we need to. So when we get inside of 1, it doesn't mean that we're free, because that's really a dangerous time as well. But that's when it really starts to hit home that, you know, we really got a shot at making it today. And I know a lot of people are thinking the same thing, because you can hear a pin drop in that firing room as you count from 10 down to T0. And then after that, though, it may get a little bit noisier at some point. But
Thank you. All right, we'll go back to the phone. We have Kenneth Chang with the New York Times again.
And Ken had hung up at this time.
All right. We will then take one more question here in the room. I don't believe we've taken your question yet, sir.
Hi there, I'm Semenic with the Globe and Mail. I wonder if you could just say something about the closeout of the capsule where backup crew members are going to be in the capsule. I think that's this evening, but could you clarify that part of the operation?
We have 2 time frames when we'll have the backup crew members, and we'll have 1 at each of the intervals. When we're doing the final closeouts of the capsule before tanking, we'll have one of our astronaut support personnel in there working final configurations for the crew, switch list, and a few other things at that point. And then on our actual closeout crew team, it's a 5-person team, we do have another backup crew member. Andre's on that one, and Jenny's on the first one. But he'll be on that team, and he is responsible. He's one of the 2 people. We also have an insertion technician, Bill does that work, that is responsible for strapping the flight crew in during that time frame and getting the crew module all set up at the very, very end. And then when they're done, they come outside. But he'll be inside of the capsule during that time. The flight crew insertion at the end takes about 30 minutes or so once the flight crew's there. They do a little work before that, so he'll be in there before that time frame as well. And at the very end, yeah, it's pretty good to watch what those guys are doing.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands in the room. All right. Well, then with that, we will wrap up today's briefing. Thank you to our panelists for taking the time to answer all of our questions.
All right, guys, that was NASA's briefing ahead of tomorrow's Artemis 2 space mission headed around the moon, and we will have live coverage for you here on WCNC Plus with Brad Panovich when that happens tomorrow. Obviously, if things shift, we'll let you know as well. We'll see you in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone. As we normally have, we did have Gary McFadden, Sheriff Gary McFadden, in today to talk a little bit about his discussion and naming Ricky Robbins the chief deputy, of course, after his reelection and win just this month. So let's go to this. He sat down with Jaden Monreal just today. Listen in.
My next guest here in studio, of course, is Mecklenburg County Sheriff Gary McFadden visiting us after winning the election. I believe that was the last time we saw you.
Yes, it was.
All right. So, Sheriff, you've been busy there, Department of everything. Let's start off with the announcement of your new Deputy Chief, Ricky Robbins. This person was your opponent, one of them, for the election, but now he is going to help you out there at the Sheriff's Office. And why this choice?
Well, Ricky is a great guy, and I hate to say Ricky, but we commonly refer to each other as Ricky and Gary, so please, don't disrespect him. I'm going to get to say Chief Robbins. You know, we always been friends. He has a great background in law enforcement. He has some things that I really are interested in. You know, the traffic unit is big for me, and so we just created a traffic unit. He's going to help me with that. But, you know, like-minded, and also, as we say, cut from the same cloth. Very well respected. And when we talked about the earliness of him coming on, when we talked about me running and him running, we found out that we both were going to run very early on and very respectful to me, and I have to say to my wife. He spoke to my wife first, and so he kept it professional throughout the campaign, and he was the only person that called me after the campaign, congratulate me, and say we should talk. And we talked, and we had a great conversation, gave him a tour of what we call the Beast, actually Central, the detention center, and we sat down and had a great lunch together, and we made a great decision for him to come on. So he starts April 1st, and that is not April Fool.
No fool there. And that is tomorrow. So what does the first 90 days look like then for him?
Well, I think he's going to come and push us to levels that we needed to be pushed. As we say, we both came from CMPD, so we have a great working relationship. He worked in homicide, and we probably have one of the same mentors, Chief Rodney Monroe. So we come from his cloth, and we're excited about it. I think the first 90 days, first 30 days, he's going to probably get his feet wet. And then I believe that after 30 days, we will see a big difference with the agency. A lot of things in what they call in the works. I'm sure he has some ideas, and I'm going to get him the freedom to do it.
Okay. All right. So the top of his to-do list, have you discussed any, broad areas?
Well, he's going to take care of the traffic. We're going to have a traffic unit. I know he's big into traffic. I know he's big into the community and the streets. So we may create a lot of things over the next couple of months. I don't want to say years, months. So I'm excited about it, and I think Chief Robbins is also excited about it. I know we laugh and joke. We have been on the campaign trail, and people actually confused us of me being Ricky and Ricky being me. So that's a big joke that we have. So now you have both. Like one person said to me, which made me feel good about the decision. She said, after one of the debates or one of the community meetings, someone says, why can't we have both of them? And I think that sums it up. So now you have both of them.
So was this something that kind of planted the seed, or once you won the election and did you decide, well, this actually might be some synergy here?
Well, it was. I mean, all along you have to look across the aisle and see somebody who has your vision. He has a great law enforcement background. And so then when you look at the campaign, if you win or if you lose, what do you do? And so either way, it's a win-win for both of us, I believe.
All right. And then so your team now, the executive team here, what does that say about the culture at Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Office?
Well, it is going to change the culture, and I think that's the biggest thing that we've always talked about, the culture. I think that Ricky is going to bring some people over that were questionable about me, and I'm going to bring some people over maybe been questionable about Ricky. And And so I think that bringing these two sides together, it is a win for the county and win for the city. We all have a great relationship with CMPD, and so we're going to have even a greater relationship with CMPD. And then, of course, Chief Robinson has worked the entire county. He came from Charlotte Police, then he went to the county police, and then we merged to become Charlotte Mecklenburg Police. So then I think that's a round robin effect that we could touch everybody in the county. And fortunately, we have a lot of great friends, mutual friends, on both sides. So when we talk about both sides, Republican and Democrat, and also in the community. So I think that bringing that combination together, and if the community is willing to come together for once and say, let's put our differences aside, as we did, we really didn't have a lot of differences, and say, let's make our city and county better.
You sound so excited, right?
I'm excited because when you really know someone, and we kind of laugh when we see each other. I know what he wants to bring. He knows my energy. I know his energy. We definitely respect each other. And so we're excited. And it's like, that's yours, Rick, you take care of that. That's yours, Gary, you take care of that. But we're going to come together and make this county great. And so I am excited about it. I'm excited about April 1st, and it's not April Fool's. We're in full force going forward, and we have a lot of ideas. And our ideas are going to be productive, and that's what I'm going to say. After April 1st, watch what happens in the city and county. We have a lot of things in what they call the hopper. We're talking about the juvenile detention center. We're talking about the traffic. We're talking about all of that. If everybody just move to the side and let us work together, as they should, we will bring you a great product. And yes, I'm excited because a lot is going to happen in the first 30 days of coming together.
All right, first 30 days. We're going to hold you to that, I'm sure.
You can hold me to, and I guarantee you won't be disappointed.
Right.
If you listen to what we're doing, we will probably make an announcement this week about a house. Think about that, a house. We're going to make an announcement about a house.
A house.
A house.
Okay,
That'll
we can
come.
only begin to guess there. Sheriff, let's talk about the jail, all right? So a couple of weeks ago, you presented to the County Board of Commissioners that the numbers are up, population of 45% increase in the jail population over the past year. Walk us through what's happening. And you mentioned the detentions at the juvenile detention center, but for the big detention center, what are the plans there?
Our numbers have increased greatly. So imagine we probably have about 300 more people than we normally don't have. So what we're doing, and I still am excited about this, we are challenged, but my staff is challenged, and so we're having these meetings, but we're going to meet that challenge head on. We're going to make additional space at the detention center. I've looked at the spaces there, and so we're going to open up what they call the G unit. The G unit has been used for programs, but now we're going to use that unit for housing. So we're going to take care of housing. Most people say that they're sleeping on the floors. They're not sleeping actually on the floor. If anybody wants me to send them a picture of the apparatus that they're sleeping on, it is a cart with a 3 to 4 inch mattress, and we have the bedding. So we're moving forward with housing, but simply because of mental health, the IRENA laws, and all the other things happening, our population is at the max at the detention center. But here's the good news. We have people who want to work for the sheriff's office now, and they are coming faster than we believed that they were going to come. In February, we had 188 applicants to come and work for the sheriff's office. 144 are the detention officers, 44 are deputies. The only thing that we are having a problem with, we have a lot of people that are using marijuana, and so that is knocking some people out of being employed by the sheriff's office. So if we can tell people, please don't smoke marijuana as much as you have in the past, and we will hire you. But we are going well. Fortunately and unfortunately for some people, we are now receiving applicants from other sheriff's offices or detention centers. We had some people who left and went to work somewhere else. But now they're coming back, and so that's a good sign. So we are doing great. By the end of May, we will probably have 44 more detention officers ready to come and work for the detention center. So we are halfway of our vacancies. So I'm challenging my staff to say, if we can come halfway in May, why can't we complete it by the end of the year? So 6 months, we definitely can hire 80 more people.
Wow. Yeah, that is part of the challenge with everything is the staffing shortage.
The staffing shortage comes, we have the applicants, but the problem is that being untruthful, forgetting about your criminal past, and the simple drug use of marijuana. We have the applicants, and we have the people coming forward, but the problem is drug use, truthfulness, and criminal history. If we can alleviate some of those, we will be fine.
All right. And you are also wanting to work together with the courts to try to remedy some of the challenges at the detention center.
Well, like we said, that's why I'm excited. For the next 30 days, the courthouse will see a difference. They will see a difference tomorrow. We are putting armed detention officers inside the courthouse. So we're removing some people from different locations, and we're going to put them inside the courthouse. So our courthouse security and staffing will be better. Believe it or not, by the end of next month of April, we should be fully staffed on the field, commonly as the road. By the end of the month, end of April, we should be fully staffed at the courthouse. So this is why I'm excited. No matter what the rhetoric is, we know what we're doing, but staffing levels will be better this summer, and they are increasing.
I mean, that's really very encouraging news. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be glad to hear that. And then as far as the Juvenile Detention Center or Jail North, what is the latest on that?
We are working diligently hard. What we found out that too many people were involved. Too many people were at the table. Too many people wanted it, but they did not bring funding. Everybody wants us to have a juvenile detention center, but funding is the issue. Staffing is the issue. And so we have a lot of people talking about what they want, but they cannot bring any funding to the table. So simply myself and some others are working, as others are working behind the scenes, we are working behind the scenes, and I will tell you, I feel good about where we are going because we remove a lot of people from the table, and we are now working much better. Let me say that. We're working much better.
All right.
So, as I said, a lot of will be coming in the next 30 days, and we are good for the next 90 days.
All right. Again, very positive outlooks coming our way. Want to change gears a little bit because this past weekend, obviously, with No Kings happening around the country, and I think we had 17 protests in the Charlotte metro area and our surrounding counties. Mecklenburg County, part of it, of course. And what does the sheriff's office do when it comes to big events like this?
Well, we monitor it just like everyone else. We monitor the parks, we monitor the flow of traffic, we monitor the marches downtown. We work closely with CMPD, and if they need any additional help in areas, we would definitely supply them. But we really don't have a lot to be involved with that. We support freedom of speech, and we support peaceful protest because that's your right. And so that's probably all that we do at this point. We don't get deeply involved with it, but we support people speaking peacefully, and then we have to support safety. But we think that this is going to continue because of the way we are in America now. There's a lot of issues that need to be addressed, and of course they will be addressed by people who believe that their voice have not been heard.
All right, very good. And then still no word on any ICE operations happening or Border Patrol that is going to come into Mecklenburg County?
No, we have not heard anything from Border Patrol. As we said always, ICE still operates here in Mecklenburg County. We had an agreement, love to talk about it. October 17th, we came to an agreement. That agreement is still being agreed upon by both parties, myself and ICE. And so it's not perfect, but we are working better than we ever worked before in the last 7 years. So I'm happy at the way that we are working together with phone calls, with communication, with cooperation, and with collaboration. And I'm always going to say that and give them credit for coming to the table and say, we're going to work together. Is it going to be perfect? Because everybody's going to look at this under a microscope. We're not perfect, and it's not always going to be perfect, but it is much better than it has ever been in the last 7 or 8 years that I've been in office. And so we're still looking to always have our ear to the ground if something goes on, and I am confident that if they do come back, we will get a heads up. I'm confident in that.
All right. Sheriff McFadden, thank you for coming in as always, being straight with us and all the real talk. So appreciate your time this morning as we visit with you here since the announcement of Chief Deputy Ricky Robbins. More to come.
We're happy, Ricky. I'm excited, and I think that when people will see the excitement when they see us in the community together.
Very good.
If he allows me to come in the community together, because he'll probably take over.
Okay. We'll see both of you together at some point, I'm sure. All right. Thank you, Sheriff.
All right, folks, going to take a quick 2-minute break, and after this, we will have more news for you, of course. We're going to go to the South Carolina Democratic Party before we hear from President Trump after that. All right, folks, welcome back. South Carolina Democrats talking about a host of things, but obviously as we make our way to the midterms, there's a lot of opportunity for Democrats, not only in South Carolina, but across the United States. Let's go to this right now as they talk about what's ahead.
Are you ready? Oh, wow. Good morning, everybody. Excuse me, I'm getting over being hoarse. But good morning. I'm Crystal Spain, the chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party, and today is a big day for South Carolina Democrats. For the first time in recent history, maybe in over 50 years, we have 124 Democratic candidates for all 124 State House seats. Let me say that again. For the first time in recent history, maybe in over 50 years, we have 124 Democratic candidates for all 124 State House seats. Every district, every voter, every fight. No more empty seats on the ballot. No more communities taken for granted. No more Republicans running unchecked for the South Carolina State House. And we didn't stop here. For the first time in a long time, we have Democratic candidates for every constitutional office. And we have Democratic candidates stepping up to run in every congressional district. That's not just a milestone, that's a message. A message that Democrats in South Carolina are no longer sitting on the sidelines. We are competing everywhere. Now, before I go any further, let me be clear about something. This didn't happen by accident. This historic recruitment effort was powered by an intensive outreach campaign launched in 2025 through our Project Roadmap initiative, focused on strengthening county-level organizing infrastructure. It also reflects more than a decade of intentional leadership development through our James Clyburn Fellowship Program, which for 11 years has trained and prepared a new generation of leaders to step up and run for office and serve in their communities. And I want to take a second to thank all of our recruitment committee members and co-chairs. And I want to give a special thanks to our committee chair, Jamie Harrison, for his vision and unwavering commitment to helping us build a party that competes everywhere. Thank you, Jamie. I also want to give a special thanks to two co-chairs, Ralph Prelo and Moses Pyatt, for their relentless recruitment efforts, making calls, having conversations, and pushing us to close every gap on this map. And I want to recognize our biggest partners in this effort, the Democratic House Caucus, for understanding that building power starts with showing up in every single district. This was a team effort, and today that work shows. And let's talk about what this actually means, because numbers are nice, but impact is better. This means that in November, voters across South Carolina will have a real choice. Not a default, not a rubber stamp, but a choice. It means we're forcing accountability in every corner of the state, from the smallest rural district to the biggest cities. It means Republicans will have to answer for decades of failed leadership. Because here's the part they don't want to talk about. They've had the power, they've had the majorities, they've had the trifecta, and yet people are still struggling to afford to live here. Our schools are still underfunded. Healthcare is still out of reach for too many families. You don't get to run the state for decades and then pretend these problems belong to someone else. This November, we're making sure that they have to answer for their failed leadership everywhere. But let's just be clear about what this means for our side. Filing every single seat on the ballot doesn't just strengthen our legislative races, it strengthens the entire ticket. When we run everywhere, we organize everywhere. When we organize everywhere, we turn out voters everywhere. And it strengthens our entire Democratic ticket from top to bottom. We are building a bench. We are building infrastructure. We are building a party that shows up in every zip code, every county, and every community. Because winning isn't just about one cycle, it's about changing what's possible. And when we compete everywhere, you start winning in places people didn't know you could win. So to every candidate who filed, especially those stepping up in tough districts, you are what courage looks like. You are what leadership looks like. And make no mistake, this party is standing with you. And to the voters of South Carolina, if you've ever felt overlooked, if you've ever felt like your vote didn't matter, if you've ever felt like nobody was speaking for you, this year, that changes.
Yes.
We are not shrinking our map. We are not lowering our expectations. And we are expanding this party. And in November, we are ready to compete district by district, race by race, vote by vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everybody. Today is indeed a historic moment for South Carolina and the South Carolina Democratic Party. For the first time in 32 years, we have a Democrat running for every statewide office. And we believe that this may be the first time since 1975, when the legislature moved to 124 single-member districts, that Democrats are contesting every single legislative seat. Think about that, folks. That means for the first time in a generation, I'm 50 years old, the first time in my lifetime, that every South Carolinian will have a choice on the ballot. And as our Madam Chair said, this didn't happen by accident. It happened because of leadership and discipline and a whole lot of work, a lot of hard work. I want to recognize the vision, the visionary in South Carolina Democratic Party Chair Crystal Spain. Crystal is a historic chair, the first black woman to ever chair either the South Carolina Democratic or Republican Party. And what happens with historic chairs? They have historic moments. This is one of those historic moments. I want to recognize Executive Director Jay Parmley and the incredible team that made this possible. We had co-chairs, Trav Robertson and Jaleesa Washington Price, who co-chaired our statewide and federal subcommittee. Ralph Prelo and Moses Pyatt, who worked along with the House Dem Caucus, Nick Sotile and Roger Kirby on our House efforts, and so many other organizations and people who rolled up their sleeves and got it done. I also want to recognize, again, the South Carolina House Democratic Caucus, whose partnership and commitment to building in every district helped make this moment possible. They didn't just support this effort, they leaned in and they helped to drive it. Let me be clear. Candidate recruitment is the hardest job in politics. You are asking people to step forward to put their name, their family, and their future on the line. And this team met that challenge head on. It was this time last year that Chair Spain and I sat down and started talking about one simple goal: finding somebody to run for governor and building out a full statewide slate. And then, a few weeks later, that goal grew. We said, well, let's see if we can find somebody in every congressional race. Then we said, well, let's go further. Let's compete in the State House. And today we are standing here having done something historic. I am so damn proud of this team. Because I'll be honest, back in January, I knew we were going to recruit a lot of strong candidates, Madam Chair, but even I had doubts that we could get 124 of them. But this team didn't doubt. They worked, they pushed, they believed. And because of that, the people of South Carolina now have something that they haven't had in a long time: a real choice. And that matters. Because one-party rule has consequences. It leads to missed opportunities, unaccountable leadership, and a government that stops listening. But today, we take the first step towards changing that. This is how you break a supermajority. This is how you build a path back to competitiveness. And this is how you win. When I stepped down as DNC chair, folks asked me what was I going to do next. I told them I was going back home to get into some good trouble. Well, this is what good trouble looks like. And let me tell you something. We are just getting started. So the people of South Carolina, buckle up, because help is on the way. Amen. The one thing they say that we're going to have this big blue wave, but this is what I know about waves, folks. Wave ain't good if you don't have somebody to ride it. And now we have 124 folks all over the state to ride this wave. And now I saw that we have the leader of the Democrats in the State House, Representative Todd Rutherford.
All right. Thank you so much, Jamie. And what a pleasure it is to stand here on this day as we have proven that Democrats around this state are not dead. The Democrats around this state have something to say, and we're going to say it. The Democrats around this state are tired of what Republicans have done. Every year we listen to Republicans complain about government, and every year we recognize that they are in fact the problem. This has been a one-party state for the last 20 years, and all they've done is try to destroy it as best they can. We are tired of it. Our candidates are tired of it. That is why they signed up, and that is why, ladies and gentlemen, they plan to win. Thank you so much for being here today.
Now we hear from Reba Cruz, Pickens County Chair.
Good morning. This is a historic moment for Pickens County. We have lived for decades under our failed Republican leadership, the policies. People are suffering. And this year, they answered the call. And I am so proud that our citizens decided to step up and to invest in each other and the entire state. We're going to send Democrats to the State House. I am a proud Clyburn Fellow. This is an amazing opportunity for our county, and this took years of hard, dedicated organizing and leadership to make this happen. I am most proud of our candidates who chose to step up and to serve in this moment. This is a defining moment for Pickens County and also for the great state of South Carolina. And now we've got some candidates here that would like to address.
Good morning. My name is Jessica Beasley, and I will be running for State House District 11. I am running because I am just an average citizen just like everybody else. I make it from paycheck to paycheck, week to week. I have a family of 5, so I know how it is to struggle every week, especially with this failed government that we have. You know, right now our state minimum wage is $7.25. With the way that things are and the cost of everything, an average person that's making $20 an hour, after all of their expenses, are basically making minimum wage. So with that, that is the reason why I am running. Thank you.
We'll take any questions y'all may have for us.
What did you do with county party chairs to, recruit more candidates? Like, what did you, on the state level, do to get them to get people more involved?
So since I became chair, we started really working to train up our chairs and helping them identify on a very basic level what level of chair they were, right? Are they a caretaker? Are they an organizer? Are they organizing to flip their county? Are they a blue county? And so we met every chair where they were, and we gave them directives, like, here's what you need to be focusing on now. Like, now we need to be trying to find candidates. And it was easier for some chairs than other chairs, but really just making sure they had the support they needed in order to accomplish the goals that we were putting in front of them.
Are you hoping that more participation will expand, the number of Democrats in the House this year?
Absolutely. I think we only need six Democrats to break the supermajority in the State House, and we're going to work really hard to make sure that we do that.
Do you have a goal or a plan to get there?
A plan, yes. This is phase 1, run people everywhere. Phase 2 is to support our candidates and make sure that we're organizing everywhere, and we got to raise money to do that. So fundraising is a big part of this effort.
So go to sedp.org and make your contribution today.
Thank you.
What are some of the districts that you're most optimistic about being able to flip, or that you're watching the most closely?
I think we're going to watch 64. We're going to watch 116. I don't know all the numbers right offhand, but there are some districts that we lost recently within the last, 4 to 6 years, that we're definitely, those are our seats, and we're coming to get them back.
What counties were those?
Clarendon, Sumter, Charleston, Hampton, Jasper, Greenwood, McCormick. I'm sure I'm blanking on some, but those are Abbeville.
Can you speak a little bit more about what breaking the GOP supermajority will mean and what doors this could possibly open?
You want to answer that, John? Yeah. You want to speak about what breaking the supermajority really means?
What it means is breaking the ineffective government that we currently have. Everyone can look around and they constantly complain about property taxes, and then you look at what happened this year and we didn't even address it. That is one of the biggest complaints that we always get. We talk about regulations on businesses. We have no fix. We continuously hear problems come up from constituents and nobody's addressing those issues, and that is what this is going to break. And let me just add to it. The districts that she named are important, but all 124 districts are important, and we plan to be competitive this year. People are recognizing that there's a failed government in D.C., and it is filtering down to South Carolina, and it is failing here as well, and that's why they stepped up. That's why we're going to step up, and it's going to be a huge difference next year when we win.
Is there any difference between 2024 and 2026? Maybe is there a difference in this moment now compared to 2024?
The difference is palpable. You can feel it. You can see it. You saw the No Kings rally. You saw the rallies all around this country. The difference is what is happening in Washington, what is happening all around this world, in fact, that is being done by someone that thinks he's a king and those that allow him to feel that way, and people are sick of it. They recognize the federal government is wasting their taxpayer dollars now, sending soldiers to Iran for a war that we can't figure out why we're doing it, and not a single Republican is saying that it's wrong. They're sick of it. They want to make a difference, and this is the way that they do that, and you will see that difference not only in November but in January when we win these races.
Can I add something? I want the folks in South Carolina to understand this. Right now in this country, Republicans control the White House, the House, and the Senate. Here in South Carolina, Republicans control the governor's mansion, the House, and the Senate. All of the things that you are upset about, guess who controls those levers of government in order to have an impact? It's the Republican Party. Right now, people are going to fill up their, right across the street, filling up their gas tanks. Over $100 to fill up their gas tanks. Lindsey Graham is saying, well, I'm going back to South Carolina and I'm going to tell them to send their sons and daughters to Iran. Well, hell no, we're not sending our sons and daughters over to Iran. We are tired of this Republican control over this government. They want to dictate every single thing that we can do. The people need freedom. The people need choices, and that's what we're going to give them. And that means by having this whole slate filled, it is going to let us compete in spaces that we have not competed before. Lindsey Graham does not have Donald Trump on the top of the ticket to be thankful for, to bring in all of these Republican votes. He's going to have to fight for himself when he has some of the highest unfavorables he's ever had. He should be scared. Instead of being in Disney World, he should be at a church praying right now that he keeps his seat. He needs to come back and work for the folks in South Carolina, and that's what this is all about. This is step one. When we say that there's something different, the winds are blowing in South Carolina and they're blowing in a different way. That's because we have the types of leaders right now to make this happen, and we're going to run it across the state.
All right, thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
All right, great job.
All right, folks, we're going to come back in 2 minutes and have the president for you as he just spoke and took questions from reporters. See you in 2. All right, folks, welcome back. The president was just speaking at an event and was at the Kennedy Center. However, before he went to that, we got some remarks from him from the Oval Office. Let's go to this right now.
Very bad people, very bad judges, but that's the only way that can be changed, and hopefully we'll win an appeal if it is, but I don't see how anybody can challenge it. I don't see how they can challenge it. And remember, it's about voter integrity. We want to have honest voting in our country, because if you don't have honest voting, you can't have really a nation, if you want to know the truth. Howard, I'll give that to you. Do you have any questions, please?
Yes, Mr. President. As you know, there's issues right now with DHS not being funded, and CoStar is one of them, which is very important, especially with things going on with Strait of Hormuz and here in our own country. You have the power to transfer control from the Department of Homeland Security to the Navy. Are you considering doing that?
No, I have a lot of powers to do things, and we use the powers where appropriate. Sometimes you don't have to use those powers. You know, they're a little severe. And then people accuse me of being a king. You see, the king, this is the new one. They've been trying for a long time, including 4 years where I was out of office watching how badly this country was run. But they've been trying for a long time. You know what they really are doing is they want to have people coming into our country. They want to have open borders. They want to have criminals coming into our country. They want to have people unchecked, unvetted, coming into our country that you can look at them and say, this is not good. And that's what happened. They allowed 25 million people into our country. Many of those people were criminals. Many of them were drug dealers and murderers and people that were let out of mental institutions, prison populations. In some countries, the Congo, almost its entire prison population was allowed to come into the United States of America, the Congo. Many of the countries in South America, they emptied their prisons out into our country. This was under Biden, and nobody can tell me that's a good thing. And yet, they haven't changed their ways, because if they ever took power, they would open up the borders and they would let people pour in and destroy our country. So I have many powers, but I don't have to use them. I mean, only in severe cases. Yeah.
Mr. President, thank you. If you were able to sign the executive order to pay the TSA agents, why not do the same for FEMA and other agencies within the Department of Homeland Security?
Well, FEMA is different, because FEMA, I really believe that it's fine, but I think it's very inefficient. I think, you know, we have smart governors, and one way to tell whether or not they're smart is how well they do. FEMA is a very expensive way of trying to put out a problem. But what I'd rather do is let the states do it and help them financially, but let the states do it. In other words, you'll have a hurricane in Florida, and people will come from Alaska. They haven't been to Florida. By the time they get used to it, you know, the problem can be solved. So I've never been a big fan of FEMA. I like to keep it local. I like to see governors and neighboring states help each other, as opposed to FEMA. FEMA is very expensive, and it really doesn't get the job done. You know, North Carolina, they did a terrible job until I became elected a second time, and I went and, you know, we had that tremendous water flood. There was a water hurricane, the likes of which nobody has seen. Land areas that never had lakes all of a sudden had lakes that you couldn't even get to it. And actually, we were helped by Elon Musk with the communication, with his great communication system that worked very well. We were very lucky, saved a lot of lives. But no, we got to do things right. And if you don't do them right, we shouldn't do them at all. Yeah, please.
Thank you, President Trump. After you said today that the Iran war may be ending soon, the stock market closed much higher. Do you have thoughts on that? And also, a judge just ordered you to stop construction of the ballroom. Are you planning to stop?
Well, we'll appeal that, but it's not, I don't know, it's basically, I mean, I wrote a part of his opinion, but basically he's saying I need congressional approval. And he's so wrong. This is being financed privately. It's a donation that's being given by companies, very rich people, so that for 150 years they've wanted a ballroom here. We're going to have the finest ballroom, I believe, anywhere in the world. And he said we need congressional approval. Well, they don't get congressional approval from the White House. When they do things, they don't, especially when you don't, we didn't ask for any tax money. We have no tax. This is taxpayer free. We have no taxpayer putting up 10 cents. And I see right here, I just wrote it out, he said we need congressional approval. Well, we built many things at the White House over the years. They don't get congressional approval when they build in the White House. It's totally separate. And especially when it's a donation. I mean, the ballroom is a donation. It's gotten great reviews. People love it. And presidents for 150 years have wanted this ballroom to be built, because when we have President Xi or other presidents or prime ministers coming, we don't have a big room. We have the East Room, which is very small. And he said we need congressional approval. He also said, but this is positive for us, I'm allowed, that meaning we are allowed to continue building as necessary to, let's see, what is that? To cover the safety and security of the White House and its grounds. So it says here very carefully, the safety and security have to be protected of the White House grounds. Well, that's what we're doing because everything's bulletproof glass, et cetera, including the ballroom. And then it goes construction and all of the things necessary. It says personal safety of the president and his staff are a part of that. So it talks about that we're allowed to continue building. In other words, he put an order on, and even that he gave 14 days. We don't need it because that's what we're doing. He's allowed to continue building as necessary. And when it talks about the safety and security of the White House and its grounds, so just so you know, I wrote some of the thing down. We have a drone-proof roof, and it talks about the president and his staff. Well, we don't have a lot of bulletproof glass. The White House was built a long time ago. This has the highest level of, in fact, they call this grass, the glass, it's bulletproof and it's ballistic proof. It's very thick. It's like that. And it's going 45 feet high, and every window is covered, every door is covered. The roof is drone-proof. We have secure air handling systems. You know, bad things happen in the air if you have bad people. We have bio-defense all over. We have secure telecommunications and communications all over. We have bomb shelters that we're building. We have a hospital and very major medical facilities that we're building. We have all of these things. So that's called, I'm allowed to continue building as necessary. So think of that. For the safety of the president. So we have all these things. So on that, we're okay. Where he's totally wrong, and he made, a statement that's fine. But I'll give you an example. You have right here $300 to $400 million, depending on finishes. If I use very expensive marble, if I use very expensive wall coatings, if I could bring it up to 400. Otherwise, we're right now ahead of schedule, we're under budget. But depending on finishes, from $300 to $400 million are being given by great people, people that you all know. Rich people, rich companies, big companies. They wanted to see this built because every president, literally for 150 years, has needed a space like this. Many of you have gone to the tent when we have a president of a big country or somebody being honored of great distinction, and they sit in a tent, and if it rains, you get soaked because the grass gets wet here very fast. It's a wet area. They used to call it a wetland, but I guess they don't do that for the White House, but it's essentially a wetland. And when it rains, you're in trouble. The water can go up to 3 to 4 inches over their shoes. That's not a good feeling for who was Prince Charles, who will be here next couple of weeks, is King Charles, who's a great guy. We don't want him to sit in a pool of water. And they've been wanting this for 150 years, and we're building it, and it's covered perfectly. What's not covered perfectly is the fact that the judge said we need congressional approval. Many things have been built in the White House. They haven't gotten congressional approval, especially when the money is being not put up by the taxpayer. The taxpayer's not putting up a dime. This building was necessary for many years by the fact that I've built many ballrooms, and I built many things, and I know how to build. I'm not building the Federal Reserve where the guy's spending $4 billion for a tiny little building. $4 billion for the Federal Reserve building. That contractor is going to be one of the richest men anywhere in the world after he finishes the Federal Reserve. The man is totally incompetent. Jerome Powell is totally incompetent, and he's got to get out of office pretty fast. He's doing a bad job, but he's also done a bad job in shepherding the construction of that building. You know, they ripped down a part of that building, and it was they say it's one of the nicest buildings in Washington. They ripped it down. So we feel, and we don't feel, we know that congressional approval is not necessary to put up a ballroom. And many things have been built on the site, they've never gotten congressional approval. And especially when the money is all put up. This is all donations by people that love our country, that love the White House, and that feel it was very necessary.
Mr. President, a couple of questions for you on Iran, but first one that affects Americans here at home, gas prices. Today they hit $4.
We're $4, yeah, and we have a country that's not going to be throwing a nuclear weapon at us in 6 months.
But Americans are feeling the effects in the interim.
And they're also feeling a lot safer.
What is the plan to bring them back down?
All I have to do is leave Iran, and we'll be doing that very soon, and they'll become tumbling down. And stock prices were up today almost to a record because they know two things. Number one, we have a safe country. We had to take a little detour because we had a madman named Khomeini who sadly is no longer with us. And we had regime change already. We've knocked out one regime, then we knocked out the second regime. Now we have a group of people that are very different. They're much more reasonable, I think much less radicalized. We have had regime change. We're dealing with people that are much more rational, and it's amazing what we've done. We had to make a little detour. So when the stock market broke all records just a few weeks ago, when it hit 50,000 on the Dow, 7,000 on the S&P, I said to the American people, it's time that we have making a little detour because we have a madman that wants a nuclear weapon, and if we didn't knock him out with a B-2 bomber, we would have a nuclear weapon right now. It would have been used before today, and you may not be standing there asking that question, okay? So I think we have a country that understands that. I see CNN did a poll and they talked about voters or MAGA voters, and my poll came out at 100%. Nobody covers that poll. They had another poll where it's at 92% approval. I think that the people understand it. We'll be leaving very soon, and if France or some other country wants to get oil or gas, they'll go up through the Strait and Hormuz Strait. They'll go right up there and they'll be able to fend for themselves. I think it'll be very safe, actually, but we have nothing to do with that. What happens in the Strait, we're not going to have anything to do with, because these countries, China will go up and they'll fuel up their beautiful ships and they'll leave and they'll take care of themselves. There's no reason for us to do it. We hit them hard. We got rid of a lot of the radicalized lunatics along the Strait. But if they want something, but I would say that within 2 weeks, maybe 3. We're hitting them very hard. Last night we knocked out tremendous amounts of missile-making facilities. As you probably read or wrote, we knocked out. Excuse me.
Pardon me for interrupting. The U.S. will be gone or done with the war in 2
I think we're 2 or 3 weeks.
Not 3 weeks. If it is,
we'll leave because there's no reason for us to do this. Look, problem with the Strait, a guy can take a mine, drop it in the water, and say, "Oh, it's unsafe." It's not like you're taking out an army or you're taking out a country, or they can drop it. Or you can take a machine gun from the shore and shoot a few bullets at a ship, or maybe an over-the-shoulder missile, small missiles. That's not for us. That'll be for France. That'll be for whoever's using the Strait. But I think when we leave, probably that's all cleared up. Today I heard tremendous numbers of ships were sailing through. We're negotiating with them right now. We have had regime change. Now, regime change was not one of the things I had as a goal. I had one goal. They will have no nuclear weapon. And that goal has been attained. They will not have nuclear weapons. But we're finishing the job, and I think within maybe 2 weeks, maybe a couple of days longer to do the job. But we want to knock out every single thing they have. Now, it's possible that we'll make a deal before that, because we'll hit bridges, and we've hit some. We'll hit some bridges. We've got a couple of nice bridges in mind. But if they come to the table, that'll be good. But it doesn't matter whether they come or not. We've set them back. It'll take 15 to 20 years for them to rebuild what we've done to them. They have no Navy. They have no military. They have no Air Force. They have no telecommunications. They have no anti-aircraft systems. They have no leaders. Their leaders are all gone. That's why we have regime change. We have nice new leaders. Peter?
Thanks, President Trump. You talked about how the ballroom needs to have a drone-proof roof.
Right.
There have been drone swarms flying over sensitive military installations in the U.S. over the last couple weeks. The reports are they don't look commercial and they can't be jammed. Is this another country's military?
I don't think so. We have a great system of. Do you notice that over the last 4 or 5 days you haven't seen very many drone hits, right? We have some unbelievable anti-drone weaponry that's incredible. But you want to have, like, for instance, the ballroom. We have a very powerful very steel roof with other things in it. And you want to have, if you're building a building for security, just like his judge's opinion, you have to have security for the president and his staff. You need heavy, strong ceilings. You need seriously thick, bulletproof, ballistic glass. And we have that. Other buildings don't. Fairly modern buildings don't have that. They have roofs that are weak and they have regular glass windows.
There was this incident down at Barksdale, though, where apparently a whole swarm of drones for a couple hours was over the flight line. There's a lot of really important planes down there.
Yeah.
How concerned are you that this is something?
Well, I'm not concerned. Yeah, I know about it. They've checked that out and they've gotten to the bottom of it.
All right, folks, that's our time here on WCNC Plus. We'll be back tomorrow with more. See you at 11.